Hello guys, welcome back to my Roblox scripting series. Last time we talked about functions and properties. Today we're going to be talking about the next level by learning about parameters, arguments, and return values. So let's get started. So let's make some values actually. Let's make some variables. Let's say local actually no. Let's make a function. So let's say local function greet player. And let's pass in a parameter. So this parameter is going to be inside this open close parentheses inside the function, and we're going to call it name. And let's press enter, and boom. So a parameter is like a placeholder or a variable inside of a function. Inside these curly parentheses or these little parentheses, we can store multiple parameters. So we can say I, j, k, and we can just store those values inside the function. We'll give them values later, but for now, let's just focus on setting up our print statement with this. So yeah, so now we can print hello player and then name. And there we go. So right now when you press on name, you actually see it says A. This means it's a variable. This is nothing yet. We haven't defined this. And how do we actually define this? Well, we have arguments. An argument is defining and given this placeholder name and giving it a value when we actually call the function. So remember, name is just a placeholder for now. Now when we actually call greet player, we can pass in any name we want. And I'm going to assume name is going to be a string. So I'm going to say hello player, Nova. And let's greet Sawyer. And now what do you think is going to print when we actually run run this? We're going to get print hello player and then the name that we passed through for both of these. So let's actually see it. Hello player Sawyer, hello player Nova. Nice. And now let's do some multiple parameters and arguments. So let's make a new function. Let's get rid of this. And let's make a new function for addition, let's say. And let's just call these x and y because usually when we add in math, we use x and y values. This is pretty fitting because these are variables too in math. And then now let's say local result is equal to x plus y. And then now let's print result. Now you could have just printed x plus y, but I just stored it in this result variable. It's the same thing, it doesn't matter. And now when we add, we can add in any two numbers. So our x, let's make it 3. And our y, let's make it 8. And let's add again. And let's make our x 20 and our y negative 5. When you add a positive by a negative number, that's the same thing as subtracting. So this is going to print out 15. And look, 11 and 15. Nice. So that's a pretty basic rundown about parameters and arguments. A parameter is really just a placeholder or a variable that you can put inside these parentheses inside of a function. And an argument is really just defining that when we actually call the function. You can see how this is going to be useful for unknown data in the future, but we'll get into that later. So now let's actually step to the next level. Return statements. This one is the one that trips people out the most, and most people can't really grasp returns around their head for a while. I know I was one of these people, as I couldn't really understand what was happening for a while. And that's completely fine. Just keep practicing, keep messing around with returns, and you should be able to get like the basic concepts of what it's really doing. So let's make a new function. And this function, let's make it square something. How about that? And let's do x. And now let's return x times x. And you may be wondering, why don't we just do multiplication like 5 times 6 or something? Or 5, sorry. We could, but I'm showing you for the video. This is the most simple rundown. This is the most simple example. But yeah, you can see what happens here. We're returning this our parameter, and we're multiplying it by itself again. And you might be wondering, what does this return statement do? Well, sometimes in functions, we don't want things to happen like instructions beforehand, like up here. So we just want a result, some sort of value passed back to us from the function. And the greatest part about returns is that this value that it returns, so x times x, will be stored from this function. And I'll show you exactly what that does. So like local um x squared is just, oh, I spelled that so bad. It's just equal to square of 5. Look how I just defined, let me get rid of this output. Look how I just got rid of, look how I just defined this variable as the function. That's because the return statement is here. Because the return has something to give back to the function, we can actually store this value inside variables. And you can see how this is going to get really, really useful later. The reason why this is so useful is because we can do a bunch of things up here and then return something. And then we can, like, from these properties, we can configure them from the variables. And I'll show you an example in a second. But yeah, a return statement really just gives an answer back from the function, and then we can set that answer as a variable. So anything that happens before in this function, though, will not be like defined in this function of a call right here. You'll simply just get this value right back, and it'll be right here because it returns something. So then now, let's actually put it into practical use. There's also another use case for a return statement, but let's just use it for this case real quick. So now let's say function make part, and let's pass in. Let's play around. Let's do returns, parameters, and arguments, right? So for our first parameter, let's just say size, and for our second, let's say the color. So when we make this new part, we're gonna define the size and color through the arguments. And this would be pretty nice to have because we could do it down here, but that would mean it's set. Like it would always be that hard coded. But if we have it in the arguments, well, later on when I call this function, this could be something different every time whenever I make a new part. So let's actually make a new part. So local part. And to use instances in Roblox, we just say instance.new. And all of these instances in Roblox will just pop up for us. And I want the part one. So yeah, this actually, we just made a new part from this function. And then let's make this part parent in the workspace. We need to parent it to the workspace. And let's say part dot, honestly, I think the size and color, yeah. Part dot size is just equal to size. And part dot color is just equal to color. So what do you think these values are going to be? Well, these have to be the same data type as the size property and the color property. And I'll show you in a second. And now let's actually return this part. So all of this is going to run anyway without this return statement. But the return just marks the end of the function. So you can't really put stuff after the return statements like part. See, I can't even, it won't even pop up for me. Because the return ends the function because it's returning something. The function will end from there. So anything after this will not run. You can see how this is pretty powerful because later on we can say something like if player alive, then do this, else return. So like end the function, don't do anything else anymore. Or like if the player's, humanoid has no HP, then return end. Like we're gonna finish. That's it. The function doesn't, we don't care anymore. I can show you some practical use cases if you guys need it because I know it is a tricky topic. But now let's just say local new part is equal to make a part. Oh wow, math, yeah. Make part, and we'll say vector3.new, and this is a size value. And parts in Roblox, the size value is a vector3. If you don't know what vectors are, don't worry about it for now. We'll go over it later. But this is just the value that is stored for the size. If you take in calculus, you'll know what a vector is. So this is going to be 3 values, hence why it's called vector3. So these values, let's just call it 1, 1, 1. So this is going to be one stud on the x-axis, one stud on the y, and one stud on the z-axis. That's how big the part is going to be. So the more you know. And now for the color, we need to use a color 3. And we can use from any of these, but I'm going to use from RGB, from red, green, blue. If you take an art class, And I'm going to choose a nice yellow. Easy to spot. And yeah, there it is. And even in this function, let's actually say part has been created. So now if we get down here, we know the part has been created. So now let's actually test. I don't know where this part is going to be freaking in the workspace. I hope it's going to be at like the origin or something. Like, oh shoot. I put it in the, oh. Don't be me. Don't be me. Don't be what I do. Don't do what I do. We didn't even define the position of the part. Sorry. I'm going to say part dot position is going to be equal to workspace dot spawn location. Yeah. So like right there. And we're going to say dot position. So the same position as this. Okay, now. Okay, part has been created. Let's see it. What? Oh my God. I keep doing this. I know exactly why. Yo, this is not good. All right. Part dot anchored is equal to true. Okay, now we can anchor the part. If you don't know what that property does, is that it keeps it still. And there, thank you. Okay, I should probably move this, but we can see the part. We made the part. And let's actually fix that up because it's inside of the here plus vector 3 dot new 0 to y or 0. And I'm gonna move this 5 studs actually. So yeah, let's see it now. Thank you. Okay. There's the part. Yeah, see it's 1 by 1. It's yellow. It's even stud offset. We can just mess with this part as well. But yeah, you get the idea. So yeah, that's a quick one down of returns, arguments, and parameters. Return statements just give back to a function to store a value in a variable. They also can mark the end of a function. So if I put right here, if not part, then return end. If there wasn't a part, none of this would run. And this is just a safety call, just in case the part was made, like this ran, but there was no part. Then we don't want to do any of these because we can mess up with the game. And even better, we could say like, if not size, then return end. So if the player, like, there has to be a size value or something. And if we just return nothing, then nothing's going to be returned and the function's going to end right there. You'd see when to use a return because you'd really just want to use it when we want to end the function. So like when all of these values are made, then let's actually return something after, you know? And then, yeah, a parameter is like a placeholder. So we have this placeholder x, size, color. And we just define it with the argument when we actually call this function. Down here, our arguments are these 1 studs and these yellow color. That's our argument. I want this to be that. And yeah, that's really about it. So if you got any questions, leave them down in the comments below. I'll be happy to answer any questions you have. Any questions, any, practical use cases. How do I use this? I'm stuck, Oh, you suck at explaining. Whatever. So yeah, that'll be it for today. I'll see you guys in the next video.